Side. If that was a pathway to life, he wouldn't use any of those lanes. He would get between those two cities somehow. I don't know how he would do it, but he would do it. This guy, I'm saying, I'm going to give his name away yet, you have it in your program, but his career began with small roles in movies such as Come Running and The Five Pennies when he was a child. By the way, his backyard was Bob Hope's.
Behind, and he was right, I was right behind him.
Yeah, okay. So your worlds came together that way. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? His first role was in 1966 film The Night of the Grizzly. During the same period, he also made guest appearances on such popular television shows as Cheyenne Brodie, and Ben Casey, Death Valley Days, My Three Sons, Mr. Ed, and Mannix. That was an interesting role, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Psychopathic
Killer
or something, a gang member. We heard the whole story. He made it happen. He was in the Battle of the Bloody Beach and Showdown with Audie Murphy. He has worked with many notable actors, including Audie Murphy. Bob Hope even starred in a film with his father, the 1975 science thriller, The Giant Spider Invasion. In the 70s, he moved more into production and writing. He has written and directed a number of films in a wide range of genres like comedy, Delta Phi, thriller, treacherous, and family film, The Dog of Flanders. And right now, he'll tell you about it, but he's working on this script he's almost finished to make into a film. Let's welcome Kevin Brodie.
Hi, thanks first of all everybody for coming to see, this whole dedication for Audie. Audie, actually the first film I made was Battle of Bloody Beach, and that was with Audie. And when I made that film, interesting enough, I didn't know who Audie Murphy was. I knew nothing about his back history or how great of a hero he'd been until he gave me his book, To Hell and Back. And I had more than just doing movies with Audie. Audie lived 5 blocks away from me. So when we were doing Battle of Bloody Beach, the first one, I fell in love with this little baby goat I had found. And Audie would come to dinner with my mom and I. We'd spend a lot of time with him, not just on set, but just getting to know him. And this baby goat I loved, I wanted to bring back to LA. We shot the movie in a place called Catalina. And after we got through the film, I was upset I couldn't bring the goat on one of the seaplanes that flies into LA back from Catalina. So Audie rented a boat, and he was supposed to go on the plane. He rented me a boat to go with him and bring my goat back. Well, when I got back to LA, the goat started to get a little bigger, and Audie would come by all the time, and we'd have stories. He'd park right in front of our house, and he and I would just sit and talk. So I got to know him as we would all get to know each other if we hung out. And when the goat started to get bigger, not only would it eat all the shrubs around the house, so every plant we had, everything was gone as high as the goat could get up. And he was starting to get horns now. So he would butt my mother all the time into the pool. And she said, "You've got to get rid of that goat." Now, this goat would pull me around the neighborhood. I'd be on a little flexi sled, and Audie got a kick out of that. So I didn't want to get rid of this goat, and I loved it very much. It became like a little dog to me, my dear goat friend. His name was Caesar. So Audie said, "You know what, Kevin, I'll take him to my ranch." And I didn't know he had a ranch and had horses and things. And sure enough, he took it to his ranch. And he would tell me updates about my goat, and it became, I guess, a dear friend of one of his racehorses. I knew nothing that he had racehorses. I figured he just had a ranch. So he gave me his book, To Hell and Back, after I had done Battle of Bloody Beach, and autographed it to me. And when I read that book, because he was a very humble, very, very reserved person. He wasn't a movie star to him. He did this as a way to make some money, and that was his career. He had chosen to be able to go on after being what an amazing soldier that we all know. And after I read that book, I would look at him, and it was so hard for me to picture. And I'd seen him, remember, in movie fighting on the beach, in Battle of Bloody Beach. I'd see him with his M16 or whatever it was they were using, and I saw a different side. He would just click from that man that was so humble, and that you could see that he was a one tough son of a gun. And I was really, really taken by the two sides of Audie. So as we got to know each other, he would invite my mom and I to the racetrack. We'd go to Santa Anita or Del Mar, and I would go out with him, and I thought it was very funny because he always didn't feel his racehorses were going to win. So he would take in a lot of money, I mean these hundreds, and he'd give them to my mom, and he would tell her a horse to bet on, and he'd bet against himself because he knew the horse wasn't going to win, his horse. And I thought that was the biggest kick out of it. He says, now no one's supposed to know this. I was real so taken with the fact how human he was. And you know, I see this, the whole the thing that Martha, you did a wonderful job. It's hard to follow you with all your stories. I have a million of them, as I gave Graham last night and Susan, and I hope you all come later on at 6 o'clock. We're going to do a question and answer. I'm still a little bit lagged from coming in from LA, and we got in. I got in early, but they kind of wore me out at dinner with a lot of stories and things. But Audie, then Audie asked me to do another film for him, and I did. It was originally called The Iron Collar, which became Showdown. And it was funny because I don't know how many of you have ever been to Universal Studios, but the back lot that now is a tourist thing, I would sit where there was a little western town where we shot that movie in, and there was a little lake, and I would go and fish there, and Audie would come sit by me, and I'd catch these little bluegills or whatever was in that water. Years later, I went back there, and as I went on the tour with my daughter, I went through the same little place, and now that's where the Jaws shark would come up and scare the tourists. But this was a little place that I sat and fished in. The memories that would flood back to me about the time I'd spent with Audie there, and I was crushed the day I heard that plane crash happened. It was right before my birthday, and I was in Bullhead City, Arizona, and it just devastated me. He had asked me to do a third film with him, and I was really looking forward to it. And it wasn't because of the movie, it was because I really grew to love this man. His son, Terry, went to school with me, and funny enough, I really didn't know Terry well. He was more reserved like Audie, but I thought I felt really kind of strange because Audie would spend so much time with me. I said, here's his own son, and he's really, and I didn't know, I mean, 5 blocks away he lived, so we were so close. But Audie was just, I don't know why there was a special kinship, and as I was telling them last night, Graham and Susan, years later I was working on a book with a friend of mine named Jess Stern, who wrote the books on Edward Casey, the famous psychic, and a lot of metaphysical books. And Audie, there was a famous psychic that I was asked. Jess was doing a book on. Maria Marina was her name, and he said, "Why don't you get her to do a reading on you?" So I said, that would be wonderful. So I went. She knew nothing about me. She knew nothing about even my name other than Kevin. And when she was doing this reading, and I've never forgotten, this has been kind of saved my life so many times. She said, "Who is that man standing?" And Audie was gone now. "Who is that man standing behind you with all those medals?" And I knew right away it was Audie. She said, "He's your spirit guide. He's watching after you." And it really affected me because Audie now I knew was and so many times I should have died in this life. And I've always felt that Audie was there to protect me as he did his troops when he got on that tank and he fought off 600 Germans, as I had read in that book. And I said, my God, to have Audie Murphy watching me. And I know he's here with all of us today too. I know how much all of you loved him and that you've come from many miles away. Some of you have come year after year. And I just, as I sit here and I hear these stories and I think about Audie, how much he would love to be here and see all you, how much there was love for him. Because in so many times he went through, I think, a lot of troubles in his life. And he never was finding that peace. He wasn't a drinker, very humble, as I said. But when you heard an animal around him or anything like that, he was on you. It was like a different side of him. And it's funny, as I was starting to say on that beach, to watch him with that machine gun. And after having read the book, I would think back and go, that's the same. I saw the man that we heard about in battle or read in the book. I saw that man on that beach fighting, and it was him. As an actor, he was tapping into what he had done and where he had been before. And that was, I mean, I wish I could put into words as much as Audie would meant to me, and also what kind of a human being he was. He was really, I mean, not only patriotic, he would go out of his way to help somebody if they needed his help. And I don't know why God took him so soon from all of us. He had so much more to offer, and he wanted to be a producer one day. He wanted to get more out of the acting. And I know he would have been a great one, and I wish I still had him today, because I'm producing films now. In fact, as you were starting to allude to, I'm doing a book right now called Return from Tomorrow. It's a book about, excuse me, I'm getting a little hot now. It's a book about a young man that died in Camp Barkley, which is just outside of Abilene. He had a death experience, and the Christ came to him and took him to the dimensions beyond death. And it affected him in such a way. He was supposed to be he was going to go to medical school, and they told him, you can go back to medical school, you don't have to finish boot camp, and you're going to be a doctor, we need doctors, you know, D-Day was coming up. And this man he wanted to be on the other side so much after he had this experience that affected him. I mean, he was dead for 9 minutes, and he was pronounced dead several times by different doctors at Camp Barkley. And the book is about his going through World War II to the point of liberating a concentration camp. And it was really interesting to me now to be doing that film. I'm producing it, and I'm also directing and writing it. And it's in pre now. As we say pre, it's getting ready to be made. I'm going to do an honor I'm going to say at the end of the film, it was for Audie, because I'm now starting to really appreciate everything as I got older. And this book is kind of not only deals with the spiritual side that's so important to me, and what it says to all of us, that there's a place beyond this world, that someone is really there, and we don't ever die. Our spirits can't die. And I know Audie's didn't die, because he was there with me, and he still is. And this young man that went through this experience, he was 20 years old when he died. I have found so many different references through that is going to affect me in a way that, you know, to have done this with Audie, to have seen him, to know I'm doing something like that now, is kind of like a circle that I've gone through. There's so many stories I could start to tell, because you alluded to my dad. My dad was a character actor named Steve Brodie. Came to Hollywood with Robert Mitchum, and I was around people. My dad did a film with James Cagney. I worked with Bob Hope. I did 8 on the Lam with him. And in fact, we shot it at Bob's house, right? Bob lived I was on the street right behind him. And I'll remember, I'll go into a little Bob Hope story, because Martha had done that. I would sneak over this, it was Toluca Lake, actually, a little area in North Hollywood. And I would jump over the fence, and because Bob Hope would play golf there. And he wouldn't bend down to put his ball. He had a caddy do it all. And he would hit him, and they'd slice this way, and they'd slice that way. And I collected all these balls while we were doing the movie. So Christmas came, and I gave Bob a present, and he opened up, and of course it was all his golf balls with his name on it that he had been slicing and hitting all there. So I got to know Bob pretty well too. I only did the one film with him, but we had Jonathan Winters and Phyllis Diller, who you referenced, and they were my neighbors. I mean, Jonathan Winters was 2 doors down. Phyllis would be in the area all the time. I wasn't sure you knew where she lived, but she would come there all the time. And as I said, Bob was in front of me, and his daughter would live right around the corner from him. And it was such an amazing life that I was able to live with these great people that I work with. And I mean, Ernie Kovacs, Buster Keaton I was with, when Ernie Kovacs, who was the genius of television, and I'm working with Buster Keaton. I knew who Buster was. I didn't know who Ernie really was. And for 6 months, all I would do is go to my school for 3 hours, not my real school. A teacher would be there with me at this lot near Warner Brothers. And we would spend then the next 6 months, every day, I would learn vaudeville, burlesque routines from Ernie Kovacs and from Buster Keaton, another geniuses. And I remember when one night, can I tell that story?
Absolutely, yeah.
One night I had learned all this from Buster and Ernie, and I remember it was starting to rain outside, and I was doing the last scene with Ernie, where I was shaving. I'm like 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, and I'm shaving in the mirror and mimicking my dad. I was playing his son. It was called Chris Gets His Pony. And Ernie had already given me that pony. My mom didn't want me to have a pony because it was going to cost a lot to keep it up. But I did that scene with him, and I remember that he had like a Rolls Royce or something, and he said goodbye, he hugged me, and he went off to a poker game with Milton Berle and all of them that night. And I went to ride horses for the weekend with a friend that took me there. And when I came back that Sunday night, and we were supposed to shoot the next morning, one more scene, because we'd done the first episode. I was signed to do 7 years for CBS on the show. And I came back, and my mother was in tears. And she showed me the headlines, and it was Ernie Kovacs is dead. And he was killed in the auto crash that Friday night. He had switched cars with his wife to make sure she was in the heavier car that he had driven to the studio. And he was in her light car, it was a Corvair or something like that. And that was what he slid out his, or he lost it with his car, skidded out on San Vicente Boulevard, and he hit a pole. So instead of doing the last scene with Ernie, I had done the last scene, I found out, and I was going to a memorial for Ernie Kovacs. It just was amazing. There's so many stories I'd like to get into, and it's really more of a question and answer because they'll lead me into it as we did last night. But I'm just so honored to be here. And I thank Susan for inviting me. She's come up to me many years and asked me to get here. And I have to do this for Audie. And I have to be here as a representative for him. And anything you'd like to know about Audie that I can share, more than just general talk. I mean, Martha, you did such a good job, as they say. But I would love to have you come. The experiences and the life I've lived, my dad being, as I said, a character actor, and I directed my dad in a movie finally, and then I had acted with him in a couple of shows, and after that, Spider Invasion, that's kind of a joke film week. That was funny. But there's many stories on so many, and I don't know which way I should go, and this is more focused on Audie, so I hope you all come tonight to do that. I mean, I've directed, I've produced, I'm writing, I'm doing this film I told you about, and my memories of being around these great men, starting with Audie. And Audie was, as I said, so dear to me, and he's still with me now, I know that, and I know how much he really appreciate all of you that have come from all over the world to be here. So I applaud you all. I'm not sure where else I should go and what stories I should get into today, but please come tonight and we can do a Q&A, and I'd love to answer any questions you have and get into any kind of stories. You get me going, I'll tell you, I've got too many to tell. So I don't know where else you could go. I wish I could start a Q&A right now, you know. But please come tonight, and I don't know what else I can add about Audie because there's so many stories. I mean, I remember just that if you saw Battle of Bloody Beach yesterday they played, that scene where I'm running and he grabs me and my mother's gone into the water. I mean, I really saw him as my dad. I mean, he took me under his wing. I mean, he would come to dinner with us in Catalina, and I remember one evening, I wanted to have some orange juice for dinner. My mom wanted me to have milk, and I was mad that I couldn't get the orange juice. So I went outside for a little bit, and my mom was with Audie, and I came back, and I figured they had something sitting there for me to drink. I figured it's milk. Well, sure, Audie had talked my mom into giving me orange juice, so when I take this drink of milk, I think, oh my God, that's the worst milk I've ever had in my life, because it's orange juice. So anyway, there's so many, so please come tonight if you can. Okay? I don't know what else I should go into, Susan, which stories you want next.
That'd be good. Do some.
My dad had so many that he told me too that I could go into about what because my dad coming to Hollywood in the golden era and working with guys like Cagney and having James Caan sleeping on our couch and those kind of people, it was because I didn't look at them as celebrities really. I looked at them as they were the real men, and I think that's why they came to me and liked me, because I wasn't someone running around like a fan. I was just someone that they could relate to. They didn't look at them other than they were really wonderful people, as Bob, that you so well talked about Bob. He was a great man to be around too, and Jonathan and all of them. But it all started with Audie, and I really regret that we never got to make that third film together. He's not with us now, so in his memory, I would love to answer any questions if you come tonight. So God bless you all for being here.